Hi, I am going with a change of format. I am reading from bullet points, not reading from bullet points, but using them to get my talking process going because I tried stringing up a teleprompter behind the camera and that kind of worked, but it still looks very mechanical and I have a faraway look on my face and I don't move my head at all. So I'm going with something different. I will go with what's very popular with the young people, like a lot of jump cuts. Hopefully, it looks more natural. Anyway, so this video is about passive recreation and active recreation. People have asked me in the comments, how they feel about entertainment, and entertainment is part of recreation. But I think there's something to be said about how engaged you are in entertainment. Is it a movie that you're watching? Is it a sporting event? Is it a television show? Is it a book? Now, I think a book, because you have to use your imagination, starts to get a little bit more engaged. You have to kind of picture what they look like. You have to picture what they sound like, how things are arranged in what's being written about. So there's a lot more engagement in reading. But then you have playing a board game or a computer game or a card game or engaging in a sport yourself, like I do judo. That's very engaging. Now, there is a type of game called a role playing game, but there's also another type of game called a storytelling game. Now, some people say that a role playing game, such as Dungeons and Dragons or any of the thousands of games that are out there now, are storytelling games, and they are, but there's something very specific that has come about ooh, the last 10 years, maybe. And they are games which are specifically about storytelling. Let's see what else I got here. So, what I'm going to go over today is something called Untold Adventure Awaits. And this is a storytelling game or a framework for telling stories. Now, you could play it single player or you could play it up to four other players. And playing with other players is very interesting because you start brainstorming with each other to go to places that you normally wouldn't go. Now, before I get into this a little bit more, keep in mind this is out of print. Untold is out of print, but the story cubes, the Rory story cubes, are not. Before I go on, you may think that playing a game of imagination is stupid, and you are so wrong. Imagination makes things happen. Sherlock Holmes, right, a form of entertainment, literature. It's his imagination. It's the character's imagination that allows him to look at the facts and then go, well, that's not true. That's not true. What could be true? Well, that could be true. And then he determines if it is true. And because of his imagination, he figures it out. Now, that's a character I know, but imagination leads towards progress. So I'm going to play Untold Adventure Awaits. I've shot the footage already. I'm pleased with how it turned out. It may be too long, and if that's the case, I will put a jump point so that you could go to certain sections and avoid sort of the rough explanation for why I chose to take the story in the directions that I did. But one of the things that I tried to do was I tried to emulate an old show that I used to watch as a kid called Cover to Cover with, I think his name was John Robbins. And what he would do, and this has been done afterward, I believe Reading Rainbow did similar things to it. But what John Robbins did was he was an illustrator, and I don't know if he read it or if another person read a children's story as he illustrated it line by line. And it was mesmerizing. And I thought it'd be a good idea to try to do that with this presentation of my playthrough of this storytelling game. Anyway, let's go on to the heavily edited footage. And remember, look for a link in the description of the video below underneath the like and subscribe buttons. And I might pin it to a comment to make it easier for you to find. Alright, here's the game, and it basically consists of a board, thick insert cards that represent different stages of a story, and the symbolic Rory story cubes that fit into slots on those cards, and other cards which determine success, failure, and reactions. I'm not going to get into more detail about the rules because I want to focus on the storytelling process instead of rules. Before I even start playing, I need to create the character and the setting. Using the dice as inspiration, I decided that the protagonist is Harry Childs, an out of work tailor who is currently going through a really bad time in his life. He's got it into his head that he wants to be a hero, so he's going to give it a go with his powers of observation and a police grade stun gun that he carries in a satchel. He'll be wearing a balaclava and a gray, stretchy hat with an eye symbol on the front. He's going to hit the streets at night, looking to right wrongs and be a shining role model for justice. What could go wrong? The setting is pretty generic. I decide that it's a modern day gritty setting in a low income section of the city. I purposely kept the name out of it so that I wouldn't get caught up in specifics. The title of the episode is They Will Know My Name. That concept has been used in Hamilton and Breaking Bad, and quite frankly, it's a pretty common idea. For starters, I turned over the first card on the left called A Dangerous Dilemma and rolled the dice. I placed the light bulb symbol in the first slot to establish the scene. I'll say that it takes place under a street light surrounded by tall buildings. I then place the alien symbol here and decide that this represents ICE agents chasing who they believe to be an illegal immigrant. I asked the game a question to determine if their target is actually a dangerous person, and I chose the rainbow symbol, which tells me that he is a positive, helpful person from the neighborhood, let's say a handyman who happens to be a Latino. The protagonist doesn't know his name, but he's confident that he's being unfairly treated. Next, I wanted to know where the chase was going and how many were pursuing. I used the key symbol here to indicate that the handyman was running down an alley and he locked a gate shut behind him. At this point, I wondered how many agents were pursuing him and used the comedy and tragedy masks to decide that there were just two. So, they had pursued him into an alley and were stopped by a tall locked gate. At this point, Harry decides to take action. He approaches the agents and says, "Hey, I know a way around this gate. I'll show you." The idea is that he'll take them further away. I turn over a card which tells me that the result of his action was a failure with a but. I decide that although he didn't convince the agents to follow him away from the target, they do think he's sincere. On to the next scene, the plot thickens, which introduces a dark agenda. By the way, in my head, I pictured the two agents as a skinny, balding guy and a big bruiser type. I roll the dice and pick out this symbol. To me, it looks like a warrant or a certificate of some kind. I interpret it to be that they don't have a real warrant for their target. In fact, the big one, as he struggles with the gate, exclaims that there's no way that this guy's dirtbag son is going to marry my daughter. So this isn't even about ICE business. He's using his position in ICE for a personal matter. I then ask the game if they'll be able to get over the gate, and I use this bridge symbol to determine that they will. My next question is, does Harry know how to beat the agents to where their victim is going? I use the B symbol here to determine that Harry knows the building where the fleeing man lives. Maybe his friend used the man's services as a handyman and they live in the same building. Anyway, Harry assumes that he's running home and he can make a beeline there before the agents. The next stage of the story is a heroic undertaking. It requires a location, so I choose a symbol of an apartment building, and it requires a threat again. So I'm just going to move the ICE agent's alien symbol over again to this slot. Since Harry doesn't know exactly where the guy lives, actually, he's not even sure that he's there really, he just starts bashing all the intercom buttons, telling people that ICE is on their way and to leave or lock the doors. I turn over a card, and Harry's successful. Harry can see some people leave to the street, There's a commotion inside the building. People are slamming doors and running around. So we know from before that Harry would beat the agents here, but to help explain the delay, let's say that one of the agents got caught on the gate and ripped his pants. Anyway, they eventually come up, see Harry energetically pushing buttons and shouting into the intercom, so they assume that he's already warned their target. They burst in and accuse Harry of interfering with their pursuit of Enrique Santos. Harry's action is to try and convince the agents that, hey, you've got it all wrong, and he's just trying to get into the building. They're not buying it. Harry tries to run for it, but the card says nope. They catch him by the arms. At this point, they seem more interested in Harry than their original target. The next stage of the story is the truth revealed, and it requires a symbol on a die to show who the evil master is. I chose a daisy symbol to represent a lady, specifically the wife of the Big Bruiser agent. As they're walking back to their vehicle with Harry, she calls the big agent and starts screaming at him loudly enough for Harry to hear. Did you get him yet? There's no way I'm letting that Mexican marry our daughter. The Bruiser agent looks completely fed up and keeps trying to tell his wife that he has it under control. While they're arguing, Harry wonders if this is a good diversion to escape. I roll the dice and get the key symbol again. I also get this hand symbol. Harry decides that since they already have hands on him, it'll be difficult, and if he runs, they'll have enough on him to actually lock him up. Harry will wait to see where this goes. The next scene is the Final Showdown. Now I decide to use a feature of the game to add an idea or a detail. I was wondering why Harry wasn't cuffed yet. It occurs to me that they are not unofficialized business, and they're probably at a loss about exactly what to do with him because they also understand that Harry might know a bit too much about their true purpose here. So the Final Showdown requires a location, but the game allows me to go back to the starting location of the streetlight where they left their car. It's also going to let me reuse the ice agents as a returning threat, plus a new one. I consult the dice and nothing's sparking my interest, so the game allows me to modify a die once per game. So I choose the question mark symbol. I take that to mean there's a mysterious man from a window above who shouts out, "He's an illegal! Arrest him! Arrest him!" This is it. Regardless of whatever apprehension the agents had before, Harry senses that now they're going to be pressured to arrest him. At this point, I'm thinking, taking action is a really bad idea since they don't actually have anything on him. But from Harry's point of view, he's not so sure. He doesn't have much to lose, and he did come out here to be a vigilante-style hero. Allowing himself to be arrested is probably the smart thing to do, but that's not what this story is really about. And perfect characters don't make for interesting stories. Harry decides to make a run for it. First, he's going to use the window distraction to try to break free and stun the bigger agent in the butt with one of his 2 taser shots. This is risky, but in Untold, failure doesn't mean death. It means what you want it to mean. Remember, it's about telling a story. Let's see what the card says. He's successful. But there's still the other agent. I think the way tasers work, you have to keep it on to be effective, so Harry decides to just knock the smaller agent over, and the card says that he's successful there too. Now, Harry's going to try to make a quick run for it, assuming they have guns, so he has to be really quick about this. I don't know the number of successes and fails in the game, but I'm thinking that Harry's luck might be due for a bad turn. Before I turn over the card, I again decide to add another detail. The game allows me to add 2 per game. But I say that Harry knows the area and can immediately run behind the vehicle into an alley that has several quick turns, which he could use to lose them. Let's see what the cards say about that. And he succeeds. He stuns the big agent, shoves the skinny one down, and loses them in an alley. And that's a perfect place to roll credits and end the session. I have to hand it to the game. It really guides you in a way that works. You don't read the symbols literally. You have to see how they play with your imagination. It's really, really very interesting. Now, Untold has a short questionnaire at the end, which help you set up the next session or episode. The first question is, what impact does this episode have on the overall series? I picture that my character has an eye on his hat, so I'm assuming the reporters interviewed the stranger in the building, the guy at the window, who described the hat and the altercation. The news runs the story as the Woke Avenger. Remember that the title of the episode was They Will Know My Name. So that works out. Now, that's funny because the right considers woke to be a derogatory term, but the left doesn't see it that way at all. Now, the next section asks, what are the loose ends and plot hooks for future episodes? Well, he's wanted now. He has enemies in ice and a hostile neighbor. That would be a good way to kick off the next episode if I should decide to do it. Okay, so that's it. That was the playthrough of my experience with Untold Adventures Await. And you might not have liked it. In fact, I bet you didn't like it. Every parent is proud of their baby, even if their baby is ugly. And that's kind of the point here. I'm not here to show off my storytelling skills. I'm not here to show off any of my abilities because I am not excellent in pretty much anything I partake. I might be better than most, but I'm certainly not an authority. I want to encourage you to try to do something that is more engaging, a recreational experience that is more creative, that kind of involves you more. Personally, I find it to be more satisfying, even though we need to have, just like I made a video about cooking meals, right? You need to have an option for a quick meal that you can do when you don't have time. And the same thing with other types of recreation, like a movie or a TV show. It's nice after a hard day that you could just click and there it is, and you could just sit back and enjoy it. But personally, I have a need to flex my creative muscles once in a while. And I kind of think that at one point we all did, especially when we were kids. And then you found out, oh, I'm not good at art. Oh, I'm not good at writing. You know, of course you're not. You don't try. You have to try. You got to put the effort in. It takes effort. And even if you are not receiving the praise of millions, it's nice to just flex those creative muscles and you will get better, certainly. Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, no matter what activity you decide to engage in, don't worry about getting it right. Get started, try it. Okay. If you spend, months doing it and you make zero progress, then okay, maybe that's not for you. Sure. Fine. All right. But definitely don't be discouraged because your results weren't meeting your expectations or someone else's expectations. Forget them, right? It all starts with you and it ends with you too. I have a couple questions for you. One, do you prefer passive or active recreation? Like I said, I think there's a time and a place for both. I tend to think that more active recreation, more engaging recreation is a little more satisfying in the end, but you got to have the time. And do you have a particular need for creativity, or is that just me and a small segment of the population? Let me know in the comments. Thank you. Bye. A little extra here off camera. Like I said, Untold might be hard to find, but there are a lot of storytelling games out there. Here are a few that I played. If you don't have anyone to join you, you could try something like Pilgrimage of the Sun Guard, The Quiet Year, or Mythic RPG. They're all pretty inexpensive. If you'd like to try a storytelling game with friends, Untold, The Quiet Year, and Mythic can be played with friends. Oh, and there's also Fiasco, which emulates the craziness of a Coen Brothers style movie. But that absolutely requires 3 to 5 people to play.